Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with a friend of mine that's a veteran musician, drummer, band leader, composer, and it's really a big honor to have him on our show. And he's my neighbor and is hitting all the time. It's Billy Kaye, great jazz drummer. How you doing today, Billy?
Fine, a little tired, but fine.
Yeah.
Just starting the day off.
Well, thank you for hitting early with us over here. We're in the room B back here. That's the back room at Local 802. We're both longtime members of the Local 802 Musicians Union. Billy, you were down here on Monday for the Jazz Foundation of America's Monday night jazz sessions. So you've been hosting these days, right?
Yeah. This is a lot of years with the foundation. This is the second go around for me hosting. Because there's been almost 10 years so that I haven't been hosting.
Wow, well, it's great because you not only host it, but you play with the cats and you know everybody, so you can pick and choose the different musicians that you think will have a good chemistry on the bandstand.
Right. That's my part of my philosophy of hosting a jam session is to have everybody compatible with one another and what they're going to play and how they're going to play it.
Right. Well, you're a specialist for that, so you're definitely the right man for that. So I'm glad you're back on that gig. And those of you who don't know who Billy Kaye is, just briefly, one of the most famous hits on record that he did was the CTI track Sugar, which you're on that album with Stanley Turrentine. Butch Cornell was and Ron Carter was the bass player, right? But we're not going to talk too much about that right now, because what I want to get to is talk about Frankfurt, because we have a lot of friends in common over there, and especially one place that's a hot spot for jazz, and they were doing it when it was actually illegal. Now, these days, of course, we know that as Jazz Keller. But when you started playing there, was it called the Domicile du Jazz?
Domicile du Jazz. It was actually the host there was a very famous saxophone player. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Hans Kohler.
Come up here a little bit.
It was Hans Kohler that was the saxophone player that played there. Rafi Luderitz was the drummer. And Andy Bay's brother-in-law back then was the bass player. He's married to Andy Bay's sister. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head either. But
Hans was quite the saxophone player. And he was a Frankfurter, so it's amazing that he was so deep into American jazz, right?
Yeah, he was part of I guess that in that regime with Adolf, where they had to secretly play what they wanted to play. So there was a title for that too, but that's going back so many years. All these titles that was going on back then, I can't remember, but that was going on. I try to think of what they used to call that. You know, they sort of like going to hiding and play what they wanted to play off the scene where they wouldn't be noticed. It was forbidden.
Right. Well, one of the guys that was very active on the scene then was Carlo Bolander. Did you meet Carlo and later on when he married Anita Bolander? Did you know the Bolanders?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, they were special people. Anita's still around.
And Uta Hip was the piano player back then. She was quite a young woman too. She's a fantastic piano player. She came here to the U.S. and played a while, and then she started teaching, and then she got a job at the UN, I guess as a translator or whatever. And she came back to playing, and then she left, and then she passed some time ago.
Well, now, what year did you start your tenure down at the Domicile du Jazz in Frankfurt?
what, around 1952, somewhere around there.
So in those days, there was a lot of GIs there, and
Yeah.
there was a mix of locals and GIs would come in there, and of course AFN radio was on the air back then, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different clubs. Matter of fact, there was a lot of different clubs around at that time too. Even if a little city, a little far out, about a half-hour drive or so, called Offenbach.
Offenbach, yeah.
There was things going on out there too.
In the Sachsenhausen.
Yeah.
So, Carlo Bolander, he actually helped some people to come in and get their green card and stick around, like a lot of cats after they did their service, and also I believe some of the jazz refugees from places like Hungary, and in fact I think he helped. I'm trying to think of the guitar player. Attila Zoldar.
Yeah.
Did you meet Attila there?
Yeah, we were on the Newport Jazz Festival in 1966 after we played together. I played with the guitarists in the Newport Festival.
Wow.
And Attila, George Benson, Grant Green, what's the guy from D.C.? Can't think of his name right up there, but he's kind of popular back then too. But it basically was the guitar.
It was a guitar evening, huh?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Attila, he had quite a story how he came over, and I believe Carlo Bolander helped him to come into Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And then, did you know Anita too?
No, you mean what's her name?
She married Carlo,
No, I know that one. Andy Bay's sister is married to one of those individuals from Germany. She was also the head of the what do you call it, the chair lady or something of the Chicago Jazz Festival at one time. And I can't think of his name, but he was popular back then too, and he was a bass player, and I can't think of his name. But there's so many individuals that I've played with and hung out with, and I'd have to look into a register to find out.
Yeah, well, that's quite a few years back. 1952 was actually a year before I was born, so I didn't actually move to Frankfurt until 1991, but I had the good fortune to meet the Bolanders and play with a lot of the cats, and of course the room thrives today, and my friend Eugen has been running it, and his family helps him keep it going. But they always have a good set of Sonar drums there, and everybody comes in there after their gigs. They drop in there, and the sessions happen all the time. But yeah, Billy. Well, after it was the Domicile du Jazz, the Mengelsdorf brothers came in. Emil Mengelsdorf, and he actually he bought the club, and I think Albert and Emil Mengelsdorf, they had some kind of partnership with Attila, actually.
Well, I was away from there for a long time. Matter of fact, when I came home from Europe and also the Middle East, so I was around in that area, I sort of got more involved here, but I always had a thing for the guys there, because sometimes we used to sit around and talk about things, how to do things. Rafi Litovitz, drummer, we used to sit around and talk about doing stuff and playing this way or that way, techniques and drummers talk.
Right.
And he came to New York for a while. He used to live on, 114th Street, somewhere around in there. He lived in Harlem for a while before he passed.
So there was a long gap that You weren't there, but you have revisited Frankfurt since then, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I went through there a few times, and it wasn't the same. You know, it just basically wasn't the same. But most of the time, most of the guys I saw that I knew there were here, and my most Yuta, she's the one that turned me on to a gig in Harlem, and I was doing a day gig. And we ran into each other by accident. And I was doing a day gig, and she told me about Cecil Young and his trio, duo was playing. They didn't have no drummer, and she told me, why don't you take a snare drum up there? And and I got the gig up there, and that was a little before Billie Holiday died.
Wow.
And Billie Holiday was like the vocalist incognito, so to speak, because she wasn't allowed to play in the clubs where they sold alcohol.
I see.
She didn't have a cabaret card. So she performed as a guest. She's having dinner, and you'd look around, oh, there's Billie Holiday. Let's invite her up to sing a song. She could do that, but she couldn't be on the payroll. She could get paid, but she couldn't be on the payroll because the club would be fined. And sometime back in then, they might even get closed because with her little habit that she had.
Yeah, they were very strict about certain places. You had to carry a union card to play.
It's a cabaret card.
Cabaret card, right? Yeah.
Issued by the police department.
Really? No kidding.
If you've ever been arrested, you couldn't get a cabaret card.
Wow.
You couldn't even be a porter in a place.
That's heavy duty. That's Ed Palermo's big band. They're rehearsing in the background, folks, by the way. Ed's got an incredible thing going for a long time. So, Billy, you played with so many iconic and historic jazz figures over the years, and did you play with Coltrane too?
No.
You never played with Coltrane? Because I noticed that on the same album that you did, Sugar, you did Coltrane's
one of his tunes, yeah.
Impressions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's something that I wanted to do, and Stanley thought it was a good idea, and so that's what we did. As a matter of fact, it's the longest tune on the CD, on the recording, because it was the first recording to break a situation. You couldn't get airplay if a record played over 3 minutes,
Right.
or maximum was 4 minutes. You couldn't get airplay. So that album and that one tune broke that thing up like. So it's 11, somewhere between 11 to 15 minutes, and there's only 3 tunes in the.
It's like 14 minutes and change,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, that was a long track.
And that broke that rule up because the airplay that it got, I guess it made money. So they said, oh well. So that moved it away from that 4-minute limitation you had to do.
And you recorded that out in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, Van Gelder.
Right. So Rudy Van Gelder, he recorded prolifically back then.
Yeah,
so
that was the
a
guy.
lot of his albums had Hammond organ on. So he had a B3 right there in the studio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, well, that's a beautiful track, and that music really stuck to the wall, you know.
Yeah, I was surprised that they got that. The other one that was CTI was it? With George? No, it wasn't George. That was Columbia. That was George. I only did one record with George at Columbia. It was a cookbook.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, George Benson, he of course had a group for a long time with Lonnie Smith. You worked with Lonnie quite a bit, didn't you?
And Lonnie, we found Lonnie on the road. He was a new guy. He was caught on pretty fast to what was supposed to happen. By the time he got to New York, he was dangerous.
Yeah. He's still dangerous. Yeah. I love that thing that he did with George. What's it called? Clockwork or something like that. Anyway, yeah, I just saw.
Yeah, that may be one of them. There's a lot of stuff on Columbia that hasn't even been released.
I can't remember the title of that track, but I remember it was a cooker, you know. And also Lou Donaldson. You worked a lot with Lou, right?
Basically 30 years. I say 30. I said to Lou, or Lou, somebody said to do something about Lou about, yeah, I worked with 20 years. And I went to the Blue Note to see him one night, and he said, yeah, Billy Kaye is sitting out there in the audience. He's been with me. He worked with me for 30 years. And when he came off the stage, I said, man, that was 20 years. He said, no, remember, started naming the gigs.
Wow.
That's 10 years that I forgot that we did stuff together.
Wow, that's amazing. You got a long history with
Illinois Jacket was another.
Sweet Papa Lou, you know.
Yeah. And Illinois Jacket and all the organ players. I did a Newport Festival with Jimmy Smith, and played with Jimmy McGriff for a long time, and who's that? Of course, Lonnie and Don Patterson.
Don Patterson, yeah.
All these Groove Holmes.
One time I subbed for Don Patterson out in Brooklyn. I don't know if you ever played this place. It was called the Valhalla Jazz Pub.
Yeah, it's downtown
Juniors?
Brooklyn. It's downtown Brooklyn,
Yeah, and Don had his organ in there, and it was the original Model A Hammond that used to belong to Count Basie, actually, you know. And he kept his organ there, and the Valhalla was one of these clubs that was kind of like a speakeasy. You couldn't just walk in there; you had to knock on the door. You know?
Give a password, huh?
Right. Yeah, that was quite a scene there. Well, you've seen a lot of things happen over the years. You know, it's a lot of the clubs are gone now. A lot of the cats are gone, but you're keeping it going, Billy.
Yeah,
and,
I was in house drummer at Count Basie's for a long time too.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Me and Clarence, last name Eddie Daniels was the bass player. Clarence Palmer was also one of them. He lives in Carolina now, but he came later. And there's so many names I have to think about who was there before. Matter of fact, it's the first time I ever had the opportunity to play with the Basie band was because I was working at Count Basie's club. And
Wow.
it was a surprise to me that he
Where
said
was his club located?
132nd Street and Martin Luther King. Was it Martin Luther King? No, it's what's that other diplomat or politician in Harlem they named the street after? It was Adam Clayton Powell.
Adam
Boulevard.
Clayton Powell, right?
Yeah. It was on the corner of 132nd Street, and right next door was Wells.
And Showman's is 125th now, but the old Showman's that was on 125th too, wasn't it?
No, that was on 136. It was in the same block as Count Basie's.
So you played a lot of times
there. Three clubs right on, and across the street was Smalls, the original Smalls.
And did you work with my old friend Percy France?
Yeah, Percy and I we played there a long time ago.
Wow.
We had John Patton for a while. Jerry Weldon played with me and Percy there.
Yeah, Percy was a beautiful cat, you know. And so, that scene up there, that was happening. Yeah, Percy and I got to play with Percy and Gary Bartz and let's see, who else? I was thinking a young trumpet player. He's really happy now, and the guitar player Epps, Charlie Epps. He was up there. Charlie.
I know the name, but I don't.
Yeah, Charlie comes to the Mondays. So anyway, besides the Mondays now that you're doing here at 802, you're playing regularly at Fat Cat, and sometimes still over at Smalls Jazz as well.
No, I do one gig. I do my birthday gig at Smalls. That's right.
That's how we met originally. Mitch from Smalls, he introduced me to you when I came back from living in Paris. You know.
Yeah.
Mitch Borden. So hi, Mitch.
Mitch is back. He was in Japan for a little while. He's back. He's back from Japan now. Matter of fact, I have his electric piano down. I want to get back down to the club because I had to use it one time.
All right.
I used it one time, and it's, when it's 88, and I can't carry it back down there because.
What is it? A Rhodes?
Yeah, it's no. It's what's that other? Not a Fender Rhodes. This is another
Yamaha.
one. Huh?
Yamaha, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they take up some real estate. Yeah, Billy. So before we get out of here, there's any gigs that you wanna plug?
No, not really. No.
All right. Well, it's really great that you had a little time to sit and talk with us. How about a little nugget of advice for the young upcoming musician? What would you tell them?
I wouldn't know what to tell them now. I don't even know. Actually, being honest, I don't even know what they're into. And those that I listen to, there could be some advice for them if they wanted to hear it. But other than that, if they came to me for some advice after listening to them, I would tell them something. But now I see them doing things and being into programs like one coming up here, how to be, what is that advertising, how to make the media, how to market and all that stuff. That's not a musician's thing.
Right.
How to market.
Yeah. Well,
I know that because I have my associate's degree in advertising production management. I've been involved in a lot of marketing, and I know what it takes to market. And it's musicians provide the music for the people that's marketing, so they got to make up stuff for the music that they're marketing. But to get the whole type of business in there, that advertising business, that's for somebody else.
you're right.
Musicians should
Yeah.
concentrate on the music that he has to play. And the one thing I tell the youngsters, get involved in music, period. When you're playing music, get involved in music. What does the music mean? What kind of statements are they making in the music? Not just being able to play so technically that it's great, but what does it mean?
Right.
And what are you saying? What kind of statement are you making? How are you making people feel?
Yeah.
When you see people feeling your music and clapping and patting their foot, you're reaching them. But when they just sit there and say, and then you finish, everybody claps, and it's over. They didn't feel anything, they're just being polite.
Right. The feeling is the most important.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's very wisely and swingingly said, Billy. I really appreciate that. And these days, so many things have changed with the internet, and it can be such a distraction, to the actual playing of the music. So I try to remain focused on the music. That's where it's at. So thanks for reminding me.
I can say something about present day. What's it? The youngsters now are called millenniums, right?
Right.
What is a millennium? It's an age. So what makes them millennial? Are they now becoming machines? Because they look like they're operating by a machine.
Right.
They're looking in their hands, and the hands are telling them where they're going, and you make a left turn over here, and you make a right turn there, and you're on such and such a street. Great. But what about up here in your head?
You're so right. Yeah, folks, look up Billy on the internet, because even though he was playing way, way before the internet, a lot of his things are out there, and you make sure that you put an E on the end of K, because it's Kaye, Billy Kaye.
there's a girl named Kaye. Somebody was doing something in the computer, and it looked and it says Carol Kaye, and there's
Carol
about
Kaye, the
3
bass player. I know Carol. You know?
There's K's all over the place now,
Right.
but they all K-A-Y. At one time, people used to say, ask me, was I related to Connie Kaye? And Connie Kaye was maybe about 6 feet tall, and he used to say to people, "Oh, Billy Kaye, yeah, that's my big brother." And I used to reverse it, and they said, "Connie, oh yeah, that's my little brother." And they looked at me like, "What is he talking about?" But that was our joke we had between.
Wow. Well, to me, you're over 6 feet tall. You're the man, Billy. Thanks a lot for your time. And we're going to put this out on cable TV. I've been on for 34 years, every Friday night, real late, 1:30 in the morning. Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and we'll put it out on the internet too. So, folks, if you're in New York City, come over to the Musicians Union, 322 West 48th Street, Monday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. And Billy will be holding forth there with a bevy of fine musicians. And
this coming
then
week
you're down
is-
at Fat Cat weekly. Was it Tuesday nights or Monday nights that you play down
Monday
there?
night. But Greg Bandy will be here this coming Monday.
All right. Greg hasn't been in town for a while.
Well,
so-
he's going to be for 1 week, and he's going to host Monday. He has to go back to Ohio because he's in charge of taking care of his mother.
Well, that's beautiful. He's doing that. That's got to step up to the plate, you know.
Yeah. Because he just recently lost a son a few months ago.
Oh,
back.
that's right. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's tragic,
So-
you know. Yeah, Greg is a wonderful cat, a swinging cat, and a special sense of humor he has.
Yeah. The drummer comedian.
Yeah. Well, Billy, thanks a lot, everybody. That's Billy Kaye with the E on the end of K. Perfect. Ed Palermo, he took us home. Okay. Bye-bye now, everybody. Thank you.